The all-new Red Dark Edition by Tata Motors.
Good evening, you're watching To The Point. I'm Preeti Chaudhary. One would have thought that with the taking down of Section 377, which decriminalized homosexuality, that was the benchmark and the beginning of the progression where India came down to equal rights. The next logical step, one would have thought, would be to legalize same-sex marriages. Not quite. The government then had taken a very different stand than the stand it has taken on same-sex marriages. After the historic takedown of Section 377, decriminalizing homosexuality, one would have thought the progression to equal rights in India had started. Next in line would be legalizing same-sex marriages. The government on the issue of decriminalizing homosexuality had left it to the wisdom of the Supreme Court to take a call on consensual gay sex, or Section 377. One would have thought the government would do the same when it came to same-sex marriages. Not quite. Firmly opposing the legal recognition for same-sex marriages in the top court, the centre submitted its affidavit in Supreme Court on Sunday, stating the concept of marriage between man and a woman is deeply embedded in religious and societal norms, and any interference with this causes complete havoc with the delicate balance of personal laws in the country and accepted societal values. The government also asserted the court should refrain from recognizing same-sex marriage as the issue comes within legislative's domain.
Government is not interfering into the personal life, personal activities of anybody. So there should be no confusion or there should be no dilution on this matter. When it comes to an issue related to the institution of marriage, then it is a matter of policy.
On November 25th, 2022, the Supreme Court had sought the centre's response to separate pleas moved by two gay couples seeking enforcement of their right to marriage and a direction to the authorities concerned to register their marriages under the Special Marriage Act. The petition sought a direction that the right to marry a person of one's choice be extended to LGBTQ people as part of their fundamental right. The centre filed its affidavit in which it strongly opposed same-sex marriages. The top court has now sent the matter to a 5-judge constitution bench. The hearing of the case will begin on April 18th. However, what needs to be and should be questioned is the government's stand on same-sex marriages. By trying to sidestep controversial decisions in an election year, has the government of the day chosen to stand on the wrong side of equal rights? Bureau Report, India Today. Many would also suggest that the government openly cannot take a stand which is somewhere down the line opposed to the stand of its ideologue RSS. The RSS of late, yes, many times has taken a softer stand when it came down to homosexuality, but still a very hard stand when it comes to same-sex marriages. Let's cut across right now to our panelists. Joining me is Desh Ratan Nigam, lawyer and political analyst; Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate, Supreme Court; Harish Iyer, equal rights activist. I want to go to Mr. Iyer first, who's the champion of equal rights. He was one of the petitioners when it came down to Section 377. And Mr. Iyer, would you have thought that this was the logical progression, that one would decriminalize homosexuality and in time legalize same-sex marriage? That is usually the course that a country would take.
I think that would have been the natural progression, and it was, in fact, in the government's response on Section 377 also. They said that they would go with any verdict that the Supreme Court would take, insofar that it's only about decriminalization. So hinting that they will have an opinion, a very strong opinion when it came to same-sex marriage and other rights. This is a linear progression. It is understood that all that has happened with Section 377 being read down is that we have, we have kept the law out of our bedroom as of now, as long as we are having consensual sex with another consenting adult. That's all that has happened. There has been no recognition as such. Recognition of same-sex marriage or marriage equality would actually be the first step in recognizing queer couples as a family. So I think that it's time and that we do this, because this is not just about LGBT. We're about two people singing Hama Antakshari during Hum Aapke Hain Kaun. This is more than that. This is about the right of me signing for my partner if he's in his deathbed, because you'll have to take a signature. If you have to remove life support, then you'll have to take the signature of the family. So me being recognized as a family would give me that rights. It's about inheritance rights. It's about the right to adopt. It's the beginning of several rights that would come, and all that needs to be done is expand the rights and to strike down man and woman and everything and make it about persons, two people marrying each other, and that's precisely what we seek from the Supreme Court.
Mr. Ayush, stay with me. I want to bring in Desh Ratan Nigam. He's a lawyer and a political analyst, also deeply knows the functioning of the RSS. Mr. Nigam, the fact is, you're also a lawyer, and I'm going to just ask you from the purview of the law. If the government was silent at the time and looked up at the top court to decide on Section 377, then how is legalizing same-sex marriage become a policy decision?
Well, even that was a policy decision.
Exactly. But ultimately, ultimately, sir, I just want to come in because I apologize that I'm interrupting. That was a policy decision. After opposing it initially, the government possibly maybe read the writing on the wall and then said that we leave it on the purview of the Supreme Court to decide. Now, this affidavit, the government says that this will cause havoc. Same-sex marriages will cause havoc, and we urge the Supreme Court not to rule on it as this is a policy decision. If that was a policy decision, so is this.
No, the fact is we have to look at the two individual cases differently. That was not about marriage, giving sanctity to a relationship into a marriage. This is about marriage, and there are certain norms in our society. And let me tell you, this is not within the purview and domain of the Supreme Court. That, yes, the government was silent, subsequently silent on that. That does not mean it should be silent on this issue also. And therefore, even if they are doing it under 142, Article 142, which itself says Supreme Court in the exercise of its jurisdiction, what lies within their jurisdiction is to interpret and not to make new law. That is within the domain of the Parliament. And also Article 142 also says, subject to the provisions of any law made by the Parliament. Therefore, these two conditions are already there under 142. And this is about society, whether our society is ready or not. Because such kind of things have to be...
Mr. Desh Nigam, does the government of the day decide what the society is ready or not?
Therefore, I'm saying...
Because I'll tell you what, because, in the UN, if you look at the track record of the government, it's actually voted in the United Nations when it's come down to equal rights, for homosexual couples. It's actually voted with the likes. It could, abstain from voting, but it's actually committed and voted with the likes of Saudi Arabia and Iraq, Pakistan, Bangladesh.
It is not only up to the government, it is up to the Parliament. Please remember, lawmaking domain is of that of Parliament. Government may have its view, may be against it or for it. But this issue has to be decided in Parliament. It has to be discussed, and Parliament in its wisdom thinks our society is ready, because parliamentarians represent the society. If the pressure comes from the society, it is made into a law. And therefore, once the Parliament discusses its threadbare implications, consequences, who are the parties getting affected, then everything comes within the domain of the Parliament. And then if they want to make a law, then it is acceptable by the society. Now, if somebody makes it...
How was it that same-sex was decriminalized, homosexuality was decriminalized?
It is, the Supreme Court has done so, but...
Exactly.
Let me tell you then.
That
Let me
wasn't
tell
quite
you.
debated by the parliament. And anyway, I just stay with us,
Let-
sir. Yes, go
It
ahead.
can be debated tomorrow. It can be debated tomorrow. It can be upturned, overturned, anything. Parliament can do anything about it. Please remember
But the
that.
government of the day has taken the hardest of stand. Look at the affidavit they've issued. But Sanjay Hegde, I want to bring you in to make sense of this. Can the government just get away by saying that this is a policy matter and the Supreme Court shouldn't say anything?
Well, the government has often made claims of policy matters, but the court has gone beyond that.
Yes.
Right now, the question is not only about the court making a law, it's also about the court interpreting the law. Now, under the Special Marriages Act, Section 4 says that any two persons can marry. And there is another subsection which says that the age of the male must not be less than 21 years. The age of the female must not be less than 18 years. So so it is quite possible for the court to find a way where under the Special Marriages Act, where they say any persons, yes. It doesn't, the marriage does not necessarily require a male and a female. Two males can marry, two females can marry. Where lies the problem? Parliament has made a law which says any person can marry. Do you necessarily read that law to say that only a man can marry a woman and that another woman can't marry that woman, or that another man can't marry that man? It's a question of interpretation. That is certainly the court's job. And this argument about, Parliament reflects society, you shall have to wait till Parliament decides. For 30 years, Parliament has not made any law with regard to women's reservation after passing it in the Rajya Sabha. How long do people have to wait? Do you think that Parliament is the sole repository of wisdom? Do you think that parliamentarians are the sole guarantors and, gatekeepers of social morality? It is up to the courts to interpret laws in accordance with the Constitution. The Constitution provides not only equality before the law, but the equal protection of its laws. So
All right,
if
okay. Yes.
two people want to get married, they are entitled to the protection of the law.
Harish Iyer, somewhere down the line, do you feel let down? Because once again, in hindsight, the government has taken credit for striking down Section 377. Though the government had very little to do with it, it came down where the Supreme Court was concerned. Do you have faith that the Supreme Court this time could stand by equal rights with what you want and have been championing for?
I think we, the political class or the political class has only bullied people who have set up petitions. I've seen it when MPs were wanting to discuss, the reading down of Section 377. They were bullied. We all could hear it on TV screens, the kind of jibes that were passed. So I have little hope. I've always had, whether it's this government or previous government, I've had little hope from the parliamentarians per se. When it came, so we are left with the courts. The courts have always been progressive and have been unequivocal when it came to supporting even minorities. You could just be one person who happens to be LGBTQ in this world, but that doesn't mean that one person's rights are not important. So if you'd ask me if I feel let down by the government, well, it's just that they have come out and they've said things in the open. But it wasn't that I expected anything different. And you're right. We have won the battle against Section 377, not because of politicians. This is despite politicians that we have won it. So, yeah.
Mr. Nigam, isn't that a pity? Because in hindsight, I've had it on my shows many times, the government would come and take great credit for striking down Section 377. It opposed it tooth and nail when possibly, like I said, it saw the writing on the wall. It says the wisdom of the court to decide. On the other hand, there's one issue that many of our viewers are unclear about because there have been contradictory statements which have been made. For someone who understands maybe the functioning of the RSS, I want to ask you, Mr. Nigam, what is RSS's stand when it comes down to same-sex marriage?
The RSS has not made any statement on this subject. So once they make it, I'll make that statement also. But our society does not promote, as of now, the development of society does not promote same-sex marriage.
So which society are you talking about?
Who decides?
So who decides what is society?
Parliament decides. How else? We cannot decide in the studio.
So who's put the parliament there? The people have put the parliament there.
Yes. Therefore, it is the parliamentarians. Some bill comes out there, they discuss, then they decide. Parliament reflects the will of the people. Please remember that. Nobody can say today that Parliament does not reflect the will of the people.
You're telling me every decision has come through the Parliament? We gave you a prime example, Section 377. If it was on the Parliament and on our politicians, homosexuality would still be criminal in this country.
Certainly,
We can't sing paeans of the Parliament being a representation of the society and pretend to be custodians of the society when we are not, sir. You and I can't be the society.
Whether you like it or not, they are. Our constitution says so. It reflects the will of the people. While sitting in a studio, we cannot say that Parliament does not have the will of the people. And that works through the majority. This is how our parliament democracy functions. And to say that they are not custodians of society, they are. They are the supreme custodian of our society. They reflect the will of the people. And then that is why they have the right to make the laws. That is the ultimate truth.
I'm sorry.
I'm not a part of this. I'm not a panelist, so I really can't get into that debate. But like I said, any major movement when it's come to women's rights, sir, when it has come to equal rights, when it comes down to LGBTQ, hasn't really come through the Parliament. But Mr. Hegre, you wanted to step in. Go ahead.
Well, Parliament is not there as a reflection of society. That's not what the Constitution provides. What the Constitution provides is that parliamentarians are elected. They can make the laws. Now, if they do not make the laws, if there is a gap in the laws, when the courts interpret them, they creatively fill the gaps. That is how you had the Vishaka judgment, which then brought in all these gender sensitization and everything. Secondly, when there is already a law, the interpretation lies with the courts. And the courts interpret it in accordance with the Constitution. Now, what does the Constitution say? The Constitution provides liberty, equality, and fraternity for all, assuring the dignity of the individual. Now, every individual is assured of his or her dignity, as well as the equal protection of the law. So, if a man and a woman can marry,
right, and
there is already an act of Parliament, the same Parliament, 1954, which says that any two persons can marry. Then, does any, in that sense, mean only a man or woman, or does it mean that two men and women, two men together, or two women together? That is a question of interpretation.
And let's hope once again...
Can I come in for 10 seconds?
Yes, please, 10 seconds. Go ahead, sir.
See, the fact is, Mr. Hegde made a very strange statement. If the Parliament does not make law, then the Supreme Court will make the law. I agree they can interpret, but Supreme Court cannot make the law. Filling gaps is fine, understood. But to say that, and he made a very strange statement, that Supreme Court can make a law if the Parliament does not make the law, that would be the end of the democracy in India.
Mr. Hegre, do you want to come in?
No, just to repeat the Supreme Court recently, it's a myth to say that the courts do not make the law. And that was in the Election Commission case, where there is a gap in the law. The courts certainly, through interpretation, can make the law.
Well, all we hope is, because I would reckon most of us stand for equal rights, not preferential rights. And if we stand for that, then 18th April is a 5-judge bench hearing, which begins when it comes down to petitions of same-sex marriages. And we hope that the Supreme Court steps in, because no matter what credit that the government might want to take on striking down of Section 377, they didn't do it. The Supreme Court did it. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. We're going to leave it at that. Appreciate it.
earlier, we were in Wetzlar at Leica HQ, and we had a very special guest, and we managed to catch him at the Mobile World Congress. Marius, nice to meet you.
Ayush, good to see you.
Good to have you in tech today. I'm glad that we are still in an environment like this where we can chat about your partnership whilst we walk with Xiaomi, right? Just straight up, fascinating device. I've taken photos on it, and I think camera enthusiasts will be pleased with the results. But the first question that everyone seems to have on their minds is a lot of smartphone companies have tied up with traditional camera companies, but we haven't seen much of a manifestation of that in the final output. No real improvement, just some color science. Largely, they've been gimmicks. Now, I've seen that device for myself, but if you had to refute that point, why isn't the Leica-Xiaomi partnership a gimmick, and why is it actually a game changer?
So, thank you first of all. For us, it's super important that it's a comprehensive technology partnership. So, it's including the whole image pipeline from lens, sensor, up to the final image processing. So that's why we didn't only concentrate only on color science or only on image quality tuning, but we were really involved from the very beginning when we are developing the lens, when we are modify the sensor, when we are going into the image quality tuning process. And from A to Z, we have been involved.
Right, and you got to tell us a little bit more about how this partnership came about. I'm guessing it took a while. I remember you mentioned in Germany that it took a few years. Xiaomi approached you guys. One other question we seem to have a lot from the tech community is this going to be an exclusive partnership? Do we expect Xiaomi and Leica to go on with this in the years to come?
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be a long-term partnership. So this is nothing what you can do just as a one-hit wonder. You have to get to know each other, how to collaborate. I mean, we have dedicated R&D team which is working on these devices together with Xiaomi. And that's why it's supposed to be a long-term exercise.
The pandemic has taught us how to socialize in intimate settings. People have started to realize now how homes need to be all-encompassing. Home offices for work, living areas, common areas, bedrooms, and to socialize, a good bar setup.
Always been entertainers at home. We always tell people, come over for a drink, come home, let's have dinner at home. So we're as a country, as a race, we like having people over more than what happens in the West. So it's ingrained in our culture. It's just that it has become more relevant now post-pandemic. People have now started realizing that if you are entertaining a guest at home, how can you enrich or elevate that experience for yourself and for your guest?
Bar designs have taken a leap of faith in recent years. Chic homes are now looking at specialized bar design creators. But what should a home bar really look like or consist of? Or what is the starting point even?
In every home which doesn't have a functional home bar, you have to go to the kitchen. If you want to get ice, you go to the kitchen. You want to get a chilled tonic for your gin, you go to the kitchen. If you want to get glass, it's somewhere in the almirah in the kitchen. So it's, going into the kitchen, but for a bar. So that was the common principle, and that sort of drove us to design these bars. And that's why you see how these bars are built and designed. They have everything encapsulated in the unit. There is nothing which you need which is not there. So you need a dedicated space in your bar for your wines, because we all know that you got to store wines at the right temperature. More and more people at home are making cocktails. It's no longer that you go to a fancy bar and have a great Negroni or a Manhattan or a Martini. You want to be able to make that at your own home, comfort of your own home.
How do you really choose a theme? Art Deco or eclectic chic? Minimalist or maximalist? How do you add the lighting? Should it be dim to create a lovely evening vibe? And most importantly, how does one show off those collectibles and barware and your collection of drinks?
What you need to do is to house these bottles. You need space, you need displays, you want to show off your collection to people. So we feel that a display cabinet is a trend which is really catching up in a home bar. It's like a fancy toy. You have guests over, you want to tell them this is my latest malt collection, this is a gin I got from my travel abroad or to Goa, for example, and so on and so forth. So I feel that in the bar space, showing your alcohol or having a bar which allows you to show your alcohol is becoming more and more relevant in India.
In fact, using the right mirrors and textures or even plants or wall art around it can add a lot of character and make your house party look even more inviting and cozy. Finally, there's a trend towards creating a more sustainable, eco-friendly home bar, such as by using reclaimed wood for bar surfaces, using organic or locally sourced ingredients for cocktails, and incorporating energy-efficient appliances. This reflects a growing awareness of environmental issues and desire to make more responsible choices in daily life. Finally, drink responsibly to avoid going behind bars, quite literally.
How would you react if something, a structure 3.5 times Europe, suddenly went non-democratic?
Team Modi unites for counter-attack. Parliament erupts in fury at Rahul. Big blowback of Rahul's UK attack. Rahul's foreign hand, self-goal explodes. Upman politics overwhelms Parliament.
उन्होंने यहाँ के सेना की माफी मांगनी चाहिए, सदन में आके प्रेस की, जुडिशरी की, भारत में जो लोकतंत्र चल रहा है उस पर उनके प्रहार की माफी मांगनी चाहिए.
Modi triggers return fire at Rahul.
भारत सिर्फ लार्जेस्ट डेमोक्रेसी नहीं, भारत मदर ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी भी है.
Rahul nudges foreign powers, faces music. Big focus on News Track.
Presented by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Growing Legacies. Co-presented by Century Ply, आग से बचाए.
Co-presented by
Macho Hind, बड़े आराम से. Co-powered by Sera, this is your space, play it your way. Co-powered by Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance, इससे जरूरी कुछ भी नहीं. Presented by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Growing Legacies. Co-presented by Century Ply, आग से बचाए.
Co-presented by
Macho Hind, बड़े आराम से. Co-powered by Sera, this is your space, play it your way. Co-powered by Aditya Birla Sun Life Insurance, इससे जरूरी कुछ भी नहीं.
Evening and welcome. You're watching the news track. I'm Rahul Kamal. Does Rahul Gandhi need to apologize for his comments seeking foreign intervention in India's domestic affairs? That's my top focus on the news track tonight.
How would you react if something, a structure 3.5 times Europe, suddenly went non-democratic?
Team Modi unites for counter-attack. Parliament erupts in fury at Rahul.
भारत की गरिमा पर, भारत की प्रतिष्ठा पर उन्होंने गहरी चोट पहुंचाने की कोशिश की।
Big blowback of Rahul's UK attack. Rahul's foreign hand, self-goal explodes. Upman politics overwhelms Parliament.